1996 was a long time ago. In fact, if you were born that year, you can already vote, smoke, and drink. And yet, it still feels kind of weird calling a 3D game retro. And perhaps that's because of the popular opinion that video games haven't evolved much since making the leap to the third dimension. But the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy is a startling reminder of how far game design has come. Despite a major and well-done graphical overhaul, these three titles play nearly identical to their PlayStation 1 originals, which creates the odd sensation of a half-modern remake, where stages, objects, and characters are carefully translated, while questionable gameplay is left entirely intact. And there's no better example of this than the first game in the collection. Originally released back in 1996, Crash Bandicoot was one of the first major 3D platformers. And man, does it show! The plot itself is nearly non-existent. After escaping the evil Dr. Cortex, Crash must pick up his girlfriend Tanya, and that's the entire story. The goals themselves are extremely simple. Crash runs and jumps towards the end of each stage, smashing boxes while using his signature spin attack to send enemies flying. Problem is, within the first hour, the general level design becomes infuriatingly difficult. Crash is down by receiving a single hit, which can be extended to 2 or 3 hits with the use of the Aku Aku mask. But with long gaps and narrow platforms, falling deaths are most common. A lot of this has to do with the stiff controls and awkward perspective. Whether running away or towards the camera, landing the numerous jumps is made more demanding by the imprecise depth perception. This is especially true during the final stages, where Crash regularly covers up incoming threats and obstacles of the claustrophobic hallways. Surprisingly, a sizable amount of the stages are done in the style of a traditional side-scroller, and they don't fare much better. Crash's stuttering momentum, combined with bland layouts, make these sections every bit as annoying, but even more forgettable. At one point, I actually went in the wrong direction for several minutes without noticing. Yes, it's really that bad. When it comes down to it, the original Crash is a straightforward game made difficult by uninspired design. Challenges and mechanics appear at random without first educating the player on their effect. Not that there's much here beyond a random assortment of floating platforms, collectibles, and exploding TNT boxes. It's pretty telling when the more focused boss battles are the easiest part of the game. Far and away, Crash Bandicoot is the worst entry in the trilogy. Released only 1 year later in 1997, Cortex Strikes Back introduces some minor, yet vital changes to the formula. First of all, the story actually has some character. After the events of the first game, the evil Dr. Cortex continues his plan of world domination with the aid of Crash Bandicoot. That's right, the hero's trusting nature is manipulated by the villain, despite the concerns of his intelligent sister, Coco. It's not much of a narrative, but it does create an interesting dynamic. One of the most noticeable gameplay improvements is in the greatly reduced difficulty. 3D stages now wind around corners, giving a clearer view of upcoming dangers. In fact, the entire level design feels inverted, with long stretches of flat land peppered with gaps. Though the challenge still relies far too much on failure and memorization, expectations are communicated, and concepts are introduced and then built upon. It's just a more polished experience all around. Once again, side-scrolling levels return, though this time they're often woven into the 3D gameplay. It's a nice touch, and reduces the segmented design of the original. Best of all, there's actual goals layered into each section, with a single purple crystal to collect to progress, while retaining bonus objectives. Cortex Strikes Back is far more complex in gameplay. There's auto-scrolling challenges, jetpack stages, ceilings to climb, and unique mechanics such as fruit tossing and boss battles. The added crouch ability also fleshes out Crash's moveset, with belly flops, longer leaps, and distance closing attacks. Environments are greatly expanded with larger levels and diverse backgrounds such as tropical, snow-covered, and factory locations. Crash 2 is a strong uptick in quality, not only in playability, but replayability, with plenty of time trials and secrets. Last but certainly not least is Crash Bandicoot Warped, which is easily the best game in the collection. For the first time, the story feels related to the actual world and mechanics of the universe. Reeling from his latest failure, Dr. Cortex turns to the magical power of Uka Uka, the twin brother of Aku Aku. Now Crash and Coco will travel back in time to snatch up crystals from the band of villains. Though the plot isn't complex, it's very well done. Even the bad guys get more screen time outside the boss fights, building anticipation. Finally, the camera properly aligns with the action, giving a consistent sense of direction. But it's the way Twisted confidently weaves from side-scrolling to 3D that really shows the maturing game design. But this sequel goes far beyond improving previously seen mechanics, introducing new concepts such as motorcycle races, which mostly play like traditional auto-scrolling stages, but with more urgency and control. The flying dogfighting sequences are also a great deal of simple fun. Not altogether challenging, but these empowering moments provide a nice break from the more demanding events. Coco's jet skiing levels feature bouncing waves and floating bombs, and Crash's side-scrolling swimming focuses on movement rather than jumping. Twisted is the shortest of the three, clocking in at just over 3 hours, but a second playthrough is a must thanks to the growing arsenal of abilities. By the end of the game, Crash is able to sprint, hover over long gaps, double jump, and even fire a bazooka with unlimited ammo. With an extra ending, time trials, and tons of hidden collectibles, re-exploring stages with these enhancements almost feels like a new game. Twisted holds up remarkably well, thanks to its focus on fun rather than challenge. Developer Vicarious Visions has taken a great deal of care in reimagining the visuals of these now 20-year-old titles, and it's hard to imagine a better looking rendition. The added textures, lighting, and shadows will likely startle anyone familiar with the originals, but its most impressive artistic choices is in the careful attention given to these cartoonish characters and worlds. Sane Trilogy looks fantastic, without altering the spirit of the source material. So, is it worth it? Yes, but just barely. Even if you're a fan of the PlayStation 1 versions, this collection might not live up to your expectations, and that's just a factor of time. However, if you're interested in the study of game design, Sane Trilogy is a treasure. Over the course of 3 years, Naughty Dog's franchise evolved from a misguided platformer to a joyous collection of minigames. It's actually hard to believe these games came from the same studio, let alone in rapid succession. Yes, Sane Trilogy has its fair share of stumbles, but it ends on a high note. Crash Bandicoot Sane Trilogy is currently available on the PlayStation 4 for $40. If you've had a chance to play it, let me know what you thought, and if you haven't, let me know if you plan on picking it up. My name is Colin Tanner, and I'll see you in the next video.